Hello everyone, I'm Melinda Jennison and I'm excited to be bringing you another Brisbane property market update, this time with all of the latest data for the end of August. So let's get into it. Just as a total market snapshot here, we've got total listing volumes. They are still down here in Brisbane, very different to what we are experiencing in other capital city markets on the east coast of Australia. So 22.3% lower total listings now compared to 12 months ago, and still nearly 40% down on our long-term trend. And this is at a time where we've still got strong buyer demand, and that's why we're seeing that price escalation. Auction clearance rates, 68% across the month of August. Buyer activity still very high. We've got house values, according to CoreLogic, that jumped 1.6% across the month of August. That's up from last month where we experienced 1.4% growth. And unit value growth, 1.1% during August. That's down from 1.7% that we experienced throughout July. So still positive growth across both segments of the market. Gross yields for all dwellings sitting at 4.2%. Listings, I've just popped there. It is frustratingly low. Buyers are really struggling to find quality properties. Those properties that are sitting on the market generally are B and C grade properties. So they're main roads or they're flood impacted or they need a lot of work. But properties that are ready to go, they're move-in ready or rent ready, they are very popular, and we're still seeing those days on markets reduce and multiple offers for quality listings. Properties are selling very, very quickly, and it is simply because of the supply and demand metrics. Very low property listing volumes, as you can see here on SQM research data, at the same time as we do have that strong demand. Sales volumes still lower than last year, 19.9% changed on the downside compared to just 12 months ago. And again, this is looking at CoreLogic data. So activity as a whole a little bit subdued. And a lot of that is due to the fact that there's simply not a lot to buy. When we're looking at buyer demand, it is very strong. We've got the auction clearance rates here according to Apollo Auctions data. For June, 65.05%, July, 66.6%, and August, a slight increase up to 68%. So we are seeing a strong volume of registered bidders attending the auctions, and at least 60 to 70% of those bidders are actually raising a paddle during the auction. So we still have very strong auction activity here in Brisbane for a market that typically doesn't have a long-term history of auctions. There's more and more auctions that we are seeing come onto the market, and obviously we're seeing more and more activity in that space as well. Multiple offers for private treaty sales, very common, and a lot of these multiple offer situations are happening again after that very first open home on a Saturday, where agents are closing offers same day or only 2 days later on the Monday. So it's so important to communicate with sales agents around their process if you are interested in a property, because they are selling very quickly with multiple buyers. Days on market, as I mentioned earlier, it's also declining in Brisbane, and that is simply because of low stock and high demand, and there's more urgency creeping back into the market. Looking at CoreLogic data here for all dwelling values, we've seen a jump of 1.5% across the month. That puts quarterly growth up to 4.2%. You'll see there, based on every other capital city market, Brisbane is now the top performer, both on a monthly basis and also on a quarterly basis. So strong growth across our city, according to CoreLogic. PropTrack data also shows growth in the Brisbane property market of 0.27%. And interestingly, PropTrack data shows annual growth sitting at 4.19%, so higher than this time 12 months ago. As is usually the case, there's a lot of price segmentation changes within Brisbane. So you can see here the top segment of the market is actually growing at a faster pace over the last 3 months than the middle and the lower segment of the market. So this is the percentiles where we've got the top 25% of property values, the middle 50% of property values, and the lowest 25% of property values. So we are seeing that top end of the market drive the price growth across the city at this point in time. House values, according to CoreLogic, across the month of August grew 1.6%. That's up from last month where we experienced 1.4% growth. You can see here now for Brisbane, quarterly growth sitting at 4.3%, the highest quarterly growth across all capital city markets Australia-wide, and the year-to-date growth at 4%. So that's compared to this time in January. When we also look at the house values, according to PropTrack information, 0.27% growth for houses and 3.75% annual growth for houses, according to PropTrack information. Unit values across the month of August increased 1.1%. That's down slightly from last month, where we experienced 1.7% growth in the unit market. Quarterly growth sitting at 3.8% and year-to-date at 5.9%. So since January, the unit market's still outperforming the housing market. But over the last couple of months, we've started to see that housing market or the values in the housing market start to catch up once again in terms of the magnitude of price growth. Looking at PropTrack data, unit values also increased 0.32% over the month of August, and annual growth, according to PropTrack, for units in Brisbane sitting at 6.98%. Now, this is a graph showing the property value changes for houses and units right back since the beginning of the pandemic. So you can see the darker lines there. That's the change in house values on a monthly basis. The light blue lines change in unit values. The bottom of the market, definitely in the latter months of 2022. Now that we've come into 2023, we're seeing month-on-month price growth in both segments of the market. And it's simply due to that low supply and escalating demand. Regardless of what's happening to interest rates, we still have a lot of buyers interested in Brisbane property. Vacancy rates remaining unchanged according to SQM research over the last 2 months. So still very tight and at record lows. So still very difficult for tenants to secure a property, although we're starting to see the rate or the magnitude of rental price growth ease. For example, when we look at the annual change in rents for houses, that's sitting at 6.9%. According to CoreLogic data here in Brisbane, whereas the annual change in rents in the unit segment of the market is actually sitting at 15.4%. So we are seeing rents escalate more rapidly in the unit segment of the market, remembering, of course, that the unit segment of the market includes both units and townhouses. That's anything under a body corporate or a strata scheme here in Brisbane. That said, we are also hearing anecdotally from property managers that the very top end of the rental market is starting to ease, and potentially that could be driven by affordability issues. So that is anything that's renting over and above $1,000 per week. It is sitting on the market longer. It's taking longer to rent, and we're starting to see some of those prices pull back. And that's potentially why that house growth momentum is starting to change. It's driven by the top end of the market. So just to summarise, Brisbane right now is the fastest growing capital city market when we are looking at that CoreLogic data. You can see the image here on the screen. This is a typical auction that we attended just recently. We are seeing strong buyer numbers, and it is because listing volumes are still low here in Brisbane. So buyers are flocking to fewer opportunities because they are very much in the market ready to buy. We are not seeing any evidence of forced selling, certainly none en masse. There may be the occasional property where we hear that people are selling because they can no longer afford to hold, but there's a huge volume of buyer demand. They're ready to sweep up those opportunities, so we're definitely not likely to see any increase in listings that's going to cause to a fire sale anytime soon across our city. Price growth acceleration is happening in the housing segment of the market. So when we look at the growth between July and August here in Brisbane, it has escalated yet again. And this is very different to other capital city markets around Australia, where prices are still increasing, but they're not growing in momentum month on month. So it's an indication of the strength in our market at the moment. There's definitely more buyers than sellers, as evidenced by multiple registered bidders when going to auction, but also by most properties that are selling by private treaty sale having multiple offers. So multiple offer is very common yet again, and quite often this process is occurring very soon after the very first open home on a Saturday. I will say, though, as we say every month, Brisbane is not a single property market. You will see some areas that have much higher demand than others. and you will see some areas in Brisbane where there is price softening. The purpose of this update is really just to report on the Greater Brisbane region as a whole and the data that this represents. Of course, as buyers agents on the ground, and our job is to educate people about what's happening at a suburb level in certain pockets around the city. And if you're looking for that sort of market intel, please reach out to us at Streamline Property Buyers. We are here to help. You can connect with us by scanning this code here on your phone. It will take you to a lot of useful resources to enable you to get hints and tips about buying in Brisbane, as well as further market updates. And there is the opportunity to reach out to our team should you wish to do so by following this link. Thank you so much for your time once again today, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Bye for now.